Hello again, everybody. So again, I'm Leo Decasaus with the Central Labor Council. A little bit about our organization before I go into the Union 101 program that we're having on July 13th at 402 South Miller Street at the UDW Hall, right next to the mall across the street from the Judicial Center. So a little bit about the CLC is we are a coalition of labor unions throughout the Central Coast from Thousand Oaks all the way to Paso Robles. We have 77 unions that are affiliated with the Central Labor Council, and we do political and community organizing to improve the lives of working class union and also just working class people. We do so by doing canvassing, endorsements. We give campaign payments to candidates who we feel are going to give the best chance for working families to get better things, better representation. So yeah, this summer, July 13th, we are hoping to have an event at in Santa Maria. That's basically a Union 101 discussion panel events where we're gonna have our executive director, Jeremy Goldberg, who has been working with unions and campaigning for politicians for several decades. He is going to be presenting about the concept of a union, very basic information about unions, what they do, their boards, their memberships, how they collective bargaining, the difference between the public sector unions and private sector unions, who do they bargain with, things of that nature. And then also just the labor movement under our microscope of the Central Coast. So with the labor movement on how it looks here in our own backyards. So yeah, we're gonna also have a panel where we're gonna invite local unions such as UDW, the United Domestic Workers. We're thinking of inviting the recent Starbucks workers who went on strike last month here in Santa Maria. And also we're thinking of inviting other unions as well to come and present to you all, whoever in the community wishes to come and talk to folks about their unions, their membership, and what they do. So we don't have a flyer out yet, but I will be making a flyer and hopefully I can send that to Nadia or maybe Ken to send it all out to you guys so that you guys have the information all on the flyer. And as we get closer to the summer, I'll have more information about our event but we do know it's going to be July 13th in the evening at the UDW Hall, 402 South Miller Street. And yeah, if you guys have any questions about the CLC, the labor movement, our event that's happening, or anything of that nature, just ask me. But I think that kind of covers the general scope of our event, what I wanted to share with you guys today. And yeah.
I have a question. Does the Central Coast Labor Council include the UCSB unions, like the grad students? And if so, are they planning to be part of the panel? Do you know?
That is a great question, Nadia. Thank you for asking that question. So yeah, higher education has several unions that represent the people who actually go to from the students who actually do some of the work, the grad students, to the doctors at the campus, to the librarians, right, to the staff, to the teachers. There's like several different unions that are established on public higher education. So for us, the grad students at the UCSB are represented by the United Auto Workers. Those folks are not affiliated with our CLC, but when they were on strike at UCSB, we were out there with them. We provided sound systems with them, and we were out there on strike with them at UCSB. And if that's something that you guys would like to see, that's something that we can definitely do, is reach out to them to see if they can make the trip to Santa Maria and maybe talk about their experience unionizing, because it was the biggest union, the biggest strike in California higher education history. So that's a big thing for sure. But to answer your question, yeah, we do have the Teamsters at UCSB and the professors. Those two unions are affiliated with the Central Labor Council. And Pam, I see your
yeah, hi Leo. You mentioned that there were 77 different unions. Could
That's
you
correct.
just name some of them that we might not be aware of?
So I'll start with our biggest unions, the unions that contribute the most to our organization and the unions that we are responsible to the most. So that would be UFCW. So if you're ever wondering if you want to support groceries or retail that are union, that would be Rite Aid, that will be Foods Co, that will be Food Max, that would be Albertsons, that would be Bonds, all the people from the butchers to the, yes, Sarah. There you go, the UFCW grocery bag. Yes, so that is our biggest union. Go support them at all those stores that I just mentioned. They are growing, they're huge. They cover LA, they cover the Central Coast. So those folks are our biggest unions. They are the folks who bag your groceries. And actually right now, they are actually have a huge initiative called NoGroceryMerger.com. They are fighting a grocery merger right now, tooth and nail, so that they do not lose thousands of union jobs at their grocery stores nationwide. So that's our biggest union. Our second biggest union is SEIU 721. So they cover the county of Ventura. They are a Ventura union. They they cover so many different positions at the county level and the city level. So yeah, there's SEIU 721. And then our third biggest union is, of course, Pam, you are recognize them. They are the United Domestic Workers. They are the folks who get paid by the county and the state to take care of folks who can't take care of themselves at home. Just a couple of other ones. So we have our trade unions. We have Liuna, the laborers. They do, they're journeymen. They do construction work. We have the electricians, several electrician unions throughout the Central Coast. They do all the important electrical work that we rely on. We have the Teamsters, right? The UPS drivers who deliver your packages in the mail. We have the National Association of Letter Carriers, the USPS, so the government funded letter carriers, among so many others, right? We have the Teachers Union, we have the Nurses Association. We have so many different unions in Central Coast that people don't know that they are a unionized labor force who earn their contract and fight for a better wage and living standards.
Yeah, I think there's just so much that we don't know. I've been in a good union and then not so good at union, but not the inner workings. And just briefly, you know, with the Starbucks unionizing, I had no idea that the corporation can stall and just never sit down to negotiate. So thank you. I'm really looking forward to this.
You're very welcome. I hope to see you on that day.
Can I just ask, who is organizing the Starbucks? Which union? Are they?
So they started their own union. Their story is actually pretty remarkable. Just a single store tried to unionize in New York, I believe, and they closed the store. They fired everybody. So they filed unfair labor practice with the NLRB, and that's just created a whole chain reaction nationwide to start a new labor movement. And their union is called SB Workers United, And we have one store in the Central Coast, the whole Central Coast in Santa Maria, the one on McCoy and Broadway. They are a small group of baristas who are unionized, and they're fighting right now for their right to unionize.
Thank you. Luanda?
Okay, I will lower my hand. I just want to add a couple of things. 721 is also in Santa Barbara County. And
That's right.
they represent social services, the public defender's office, those investigators there, because I used to be in the union before I became management. And I also want to say that CCLC is a big supporter of the NAACP and was one of our sponsors for Black History. They do the Juneteenth and just anything that we call on, they support. And then also, we support them with the Labor Day picnic in September. So we just really love them. And our very own Andrew Oman with CTA is a partner with CCLC, as is SMEA, the teachers union in Santa Maria Bonita. So just want to put in a plug.
Thank you, Luanda. And I'd have to plug the United Auto Workers. I am a lifelong United Auto Worker because I built Mack trucks for a couple of years, a long time ago. And how on earth does UAW represent students? But I think it's great. I love it. So thank you. Thank you.
That could be a discussion for another day.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about that. It's just a curiosity. I've still got my union pin. And anything else, Leonardo, that you would want to add? Or
I'm sure there is. I thank you, Luanda, for that input. She did mention our Labor Day, so I was actually talking to Scott about this earlier when we were on our Google Meet. Earlier when we were on the wrong meeting, but we do have our Labor Day event. I know that's way down the line in a few months, but we do have our Labor Day event September 9th at Pioneer Park. Come get some barbecue and have some fun with some folks and good discussion and music and support labor. So we'll be there too. We'll have that event too in September.
thank you so much. If there are no other questions for Leonardo, we'll move to the Santa Maria City Urban Forestry Program. And Jeannie, will you introduce this topic and our speaker?
Yeah, I sure would like to. Thank you. We invited Scott Christian to come talk. He's an amazing forester for the city of Santa Maria. I've been really impressed. I was invited to be on the Urban Forestry Committee and along with other community members. Scott has just really impressed me as really caring about the tree canopy and the issues, the entire scope of what's involved in having a good urban forest. I mean, a lot of people just, oh, trees, but there's a whole system here. And the city is working on an urban forestry plan. Scott is in charge of that. And before I say more, I'm not going to say more because Scott is so much more knowledgeable than me. I just wanted to say I'm really impressed with him and what the city is doing right now. And that's kind of amazing coming from me because I've really gotten down on the city before for them taking out trees when I didn't think they needed to. So I'm really glad to see this change and Scott leading that change. So thank you for being here, Scott.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the great introduction. My name's Scott Christian. I work for Recreation and Parks for the city of Santa Maria. So tonight I'm talking to you as the urban forester. All of us in our department tend to wear more than one hat, but that's what I'm going to talk about. I hold 3 different International Society of Arboriculture certificates, and I've been doing the urban forestry for about 2 years now. The Rec and Parks Department is in charge of not only the trees in all our city parks, but we take care of most front yard trees on residences throughout the city. So we care for them and we advocate for them and replant them. And we also have lots of streetscape areas. So we have 27,000 trees in round numbers right now that are considered public trees that are under our care. So that's sort of where we're at right now. This management plan is being funded by a grant. Is through CAL FIRE. The state funnels money. Often this comes from industry that has to, in essence, pay fees for the pollutions they cause, and it's funneled through CAL FIRE as the state version of the forestry department, and then we apply for grants. It's not the first grant we've applied for. They have sort of a whole progressive cycle of what they want, and it all fits our desires too. The current forest management plan is at least 25 years old, and so it was time to update it. So we are currently working on that. Before I talk about it, I can't help but just plug the trees in general. So I mean, everyone has their ideal for trees, but trees in an urban setting run the gamut of different benefits. So people don't often realize they are part of our stormwater mitigation. So these winter rains, they actually slow down the rain and help prevent flooding. In Santa Maria, they do a lot to mitigate wind. Also, they reduce urban sound and reflections, like heat reflections off all the paved surfaces. Air quality, everyone knows that trees and plants emit oxygen we need, but the trees themselves actually act as a particulate filter, taking a lot of pollutants out of the air, especially in Santa Maria with all the agricultural dust, but even some of the combustion engine particulates, they literally, it absorbs them. I like to point out to people that trees tend to increase property values, so please have a tree in your front yard. They also are, maybe not individually, but certainly in a park situation, they are proven beneficial for people's mental health. People are happier when they see trees, and people tend to be happier in green spaces when within an urban environment. And I think this is a untapped benefit that we need to plug more. I don't think people quite consciously thought this one out. I like to think that the trees help not only to nurture some of nature in our urban environment, but also to help connect the urbanites to nature, which I see somewhat of a schism that, and so just, and you can think of that as the birds and the bees and the trees and stuff, but I think it's important. And then lastly, and this goes back to air pollution, trees need carbon dioxide as a major building block. The 50% of the dry weight of wood is carbon. So why is that important? Well, they're one of nature's major sort of soldiers combating climate change. And so, and climate change is often significantly pushed by urban environments where we tend to have heightened pollution levels. They also tend to reduce the heat island effect in urban environments, which then cuts down on the need for burning fossil fuels to do things like run your air conditioners. So, you know, and I could just go on all day long with how I like trees. So, but these are some of the benefits that we're bringing. So what this plan has been about is we have a consultant to do it, because we in the city always know that everyone listens better if we have a consultant tell you rather than staff tell you. So we've got this consultant. They have reviewed all our data, because every one of those 27,000 trees we have GPS located, and we know something about all of them. They've been crunching the numbers on that and giving us feedback. We also did a citizens outreach tree survey to try to see how people felt about the trees, and specifically what areas were important to them. We've now been working, Jeannie has been working on this with the group to create sort of a vision statement going forward. This plan will come out with goals. So some of those are just management plans, but as mentioned, we don't so much think of the urban forest in the individual trunks. We think of it in canopy cover. So this is the percentage of the area covered by the trees. So think of it sort of a Google Earth view of reality. And so we have goals on how we want to increase that. Some of this will be going into rewrites to the municipal code so that this is codified and both staff and citizens will follow that. And then there actually will end up being in the end sort of a multi-purpose document. There'll be a section where people can geek out on all the data that they've been found, but we're going to have more of a public outreach version, and then also a staff and contractor sort of guide to how we do things. So those are sort of all the aspects we're looking at. Just to give you an idea, we're looking at potentially wanting to, well, we haven't adopted it, but I have emotionally, we want to plant about 1,000 trees a year in the city. And that's because currently the canopy cover in Santa Maria is at 5.5%, which is pretty low. And we're aiming to get to sort of the tree industry standard goal of 20%. So it's a long haul of about 1,000 trees a year. And we are currently, this year and the next 2 years, we already have secured funding to be able to meet those goals. These goals do not have to all be public trees. They just need to be trees. Most cities on the Central Coast do not meet this goal. Currently, the only communities that are anywhere close to 20% are Montecito and Atascadero. Both were built in natural forests, okay? So they have sort of a leg up. And in the one case, there's also a lot of money backing the trees. So that's sort of our goals. That's sort of the quick overview. I'm happy to answer questions or talk about anything you want.
How many, oh, we've got some people with hands up. All right, let's just go from the first people who raised their hand, which was Cliff. You want to go ahead and say?
Yeah. Here we go. So I'm curious what you just said about Montecito and it being built in a forest. I grew up in Nebraska where trees had to be planted. I mean, there were some the cottonwoods were there, but most of the trees were planted there. I then went to school back east, where where the cities and the towns were built in a forest, so you had to cut the trees down. So I'm curious, now that I'm in California with all the palm trees do not really provide a canopy, at least most of the palm trees. So how does that fit into your into your plans as far as the canopy?
Currently in our old plan and certainly in the new plan, palm trees are, first of all, we just call them palms. We've dropped trees from the title. They are not on our approved list because of what you said. Most palm trees provide, they do provide everything I mentioned about the good qualities of trees, but you could get the same level from a moderate sized shrub in your yard. They're filling up a space that another tree could give us a lot more benefits for. And this is one common misunderstanding. California has one native palm, and it's native to the inland deserts at the bottom edge of the state. So the palm trees in this community and on the Central Coast are not native. The primary native tree to this area of the state is the California live oak. So we don't want to use the palms because, like I said, they're taking up space where we could put something that serves our urban forest better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see Lawanda is next.
Thank you, Jeannie. So I'm curious about the tree survey. Maybe I missed when you said we would have the results, because I did take the survey, I think, a couple of times.
Okay, I have sent, I will have to check, but I had this sent out to our public information people to publish. So it should be on our social media, but I can confirm that it has been. That would be the primary way to look over it. I could also email it to this group.
And I also have it up on my screen right now if we wanted to run through it really quickly. I've got the survey results. Would everybody like to take a quick look at those?
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to know how many people took the survey. And was it just specific to Santa Maria and Lompoc, or did we do like all of the county?
It was specific to the city of Santa Maria. We were looking for people that either lived or did business, which could include shopping in Santa Maria.
Thank you.
And how many answered the survey?
I'm a little vague. It was somewhere between like 250 and 280 that we got back, which they considered a representative sample.
Okay, so if you guys are ready, I will share my screen. And maybe Scott, there's like, was it about 20 pages or 25 pages? Can everybody see this?
Yeah, and this first screen shows what Lawanda was just asking about. So you can see most of the respondents said that they lived, worked in Santa Maria.
Okay, let's see, how can I, next page. What is your favorite tree?
They didn't answer it. I was sort of happy when I read the individual ones. Oak trees came up quite a bit. I like that.
Oh, I skipped a page here.
This
So-
is a great answer, you know. I
Yeah.
consider trees in my neighborhood a benefit to my community. know, so rather overwhelming, yes.
So I'll say something here, how important are trees compared to other infrastructure? And we've got maybe 25% or 25% said they're more important, and about 70% said they are as important. And to me, that was super significant, because there's the majority, the overwhelming majority, thought trees were really important. There's very few that didn't think they were as important as other infrastructure. But I think that's saying there's a lot of value in trees. People value them a lot. I didn't want to say one other thing though about the numbers of people who took the survey. I'd really like to see more, but I know,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see if we can't get another. The survey is closed at this point, but I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I would have liked to seen about twice as many, but we had it open quite a long time, and
We sent it out a few times from SBCAN, and we also encouraged people who received it to distribute it to their groups. And I know that other people in our committee were sending it out, as well as the city was reaching out. So I don't know, but I mean, it's something. And the people who did respond are really showing that they care about trees and the urban forest.
yeah.
What would you like to say about this screen?
Okay, well, this is more public space trees, and fairly good response on this. I mean, certainly nothing negative. Our parks have lots of trees. I'm afraid as the forester butt heads with the recreation side of our department, who want to keep enough grassy open space for field play, and I want to put more trees in, but
Yeah. There's a challenge. There's a lot of people who want active recreation. I think where it says fair and poor, maybe those are areas of the city that don't have as much coverage.
yeah.
Okay, so what should be the goals of the city urban forest management plan? Do you want me just to read these out, Scott, or do you want to say something about them?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they're pretty similar on most responses, except for well, they're not as strong on the reducing number of trees removed every year, although no one likes to see a tree removed. We got obviously the highest one was maintaining the trees. Actually, that's a goal, and it's a goal that I think we are actually meeting quite well. We need to do a better, like I was just saying, we're planting a lot of trees right now. Historically, we have not been very good at planting trees. And so we're trying to change that around. Because I see that's one of the goals, and that has to go to counteract the removal of trees, because a certain number of trees have to be removed because we have risk obligations that we can't dance around.
And it seems like some of the problems with trees are they're planted in developments and they're not maintained, and then they never reach maturity, and you get a lot of parking lots that don't have much tree coverage. So I think that was one of the goals we were going to try to improve that aspect.
Yeah, and that may be a good thing to talk to for a second. So both recreation and parks and community development both condition trees that are for private settings, and that the care of them are on these tend to be businesses, so parking lots are a great example, or an apartment complex. And we need to get more proactive in our oversight, because tree companies want to make money. So if someone who's not very well versed on it, on trees goes, I think I need something, and they call a tree company up, they'll find something that you need from them, and so they can make some money. And what happens is over pruning the trees happens a lot. And we need to update that culture.
Over pruning, and does that result in the tree dying, or?
If you, it's sort of, you know, it can be sort of a death by 1,000 cuts if you keep whittling at it enough. But think of it in this way, in the short term, if we're looking for canopy coverage and an apartment complex cuts 25% of their canopy away every 3 or 4 years, it slows us down from getting to that goal. But long term, it's going to shorten these trees' lives, and it actually, the over pruning leads to branch failures in trees, which then makes the management companies prejudiced against the trees, so they may try to remove them. They shouldn't, but they do. And if anyone wants to see something that was well-intentioned but just terrible, the Taco Bell on South Broadway, go in there and look, they butchered all the trees. And I'm sure, you know, the management decided they needed to do a little work, and they went with whoever had the cheapest bid. And those trees are wrecked, and they really should all be replaced. So we're trying to, what we want to do is, the problem is it's like those trees are under the care or oversight of community development, and we want to take that away from them because they don't have staff that are tree people, and we want to put it back in the hands of arborists. And so that's going to be hopefully some municipal rewrite that goes along with this management plan.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next screen because there's a lot of these.
Yeah.
So what do you value most about trees? Improving the environment, cooling temperatures, protecting human health, aesthetics or appearance, psychological or emotional, habitat for wildlife, carbon storage to mitigate, and increasing property values. Do you want to say anything about this, Scott?
No, I think that's great that they covered all those and that people were conscious of that. These speak to me. I mean, I mentioned the least is property value, but I like to mention it because, like, I just had a gentleman today saying, I'm trying to sell my parents' house and I'm worried that the tree in the front yard, not because there was something wrong with it, but because it was a tree, was going to reduce its sales value. And I'm like, no.
It improves its sales value.
It does hugely. So I think this is great. And I think improving the environment, having such a strong bar is great, because really that's the biggest thing.
What factors would make you not want to have a tree on your property? Select all that apply. Cost to trim trees, cost to water trees, mess leaved by leaves, fruit, damage to sewer, risk of damage by falling trees, fire hazard, no issues, or other.
Yeah, I'd say this is a good time just to talk about one of the things, and this is part of our plan, is educational outreach. The mention of sewers, trees get implicated in damaging people's sewers lines, and they're not really the main factor. Tree roots love the nutrient-rich water coming out of broken sewer lines, and they tend to grow right back along that trace until they end up in the line, and they may clog it up. But the point was, the line was broken first. So this is where we need to do some education, because usually it's poor maintenance on your own line, not the tree's fault. This is just an example of education we need to do to the public to get that kind of feedback to change.
Okay, going to the next one. Have you observed damage caused by trees in your neighborhood? Select all that apply. A lot of people said no, yes, there's damage to street or sidewalk, some damage to overhead utilities, some damage to underground infrastructure, and some other.
We do have a lot of heaved sidewalks. The tree industry is constantly learning more and more, so we plant trees, different trees, and plant them differently than we used to in regards to infrastructure like sidewalks, but we still have these older trees, and so we have to deal with what we have.
So I think we need to maybe in the ordinance or in the policies to have the sidewalks go around the trees rather than cutting the tree out because it's lifted the sidewalk. And a lot of cities do that, and they have these beautiful old trees, whereas we don't have so many of those.
Yes, yeah, and you got a good point, because we will put a value to a tree, and often people will claim that we need to cut a tree that we've given a $10,000 value down because it did $2,000 damage in concrete. And again, part of that needs to be education, so people understand they both have value. And I agree, there are ways to modify it. And we're starting to work on that. We have a much greener public works department now than we had a few years ago, and that is really good.
Okay, I'm going to go more quickly through
Yes.
these. We're getting late on time. Do you agree or disagree? The city should have regulations that protect trees on private property. Okay, we should talk about this one a little bit, because I think this is a big point. Strongly agree, 30-something% agree, 20-something% strong, someone agrees. Anyway, so you add those up, that's a pretty big percentage that agree to some degree, and then there's some that disagree. I think this is where you come into some regulations that might protect trees that are on private property that we haven't had before. So do you want to say something, Scott?
Yeah, so this probably speaks well to a group like this. So some California cities have this, where they go, we don't care where it is, we don't care who planted it. Usually they go, you know, when a tree gets to such a size, like 9 inches in diameter or something, it's now under the city's preview, and you have to get a permit to do anything, prune it, remove it, sort of like you would a building permit. And it's to help preserve and protect them. I'm a big advocate for this. My concern is, I'm not sure if the city politics are leaning far enough this way to do this. This needs some advocating. I don't think we're just going to get the city council just to rubber stamp this, honestly.
No, I wouldn't think so. Okay, where would you like to see more trees planted in Santa Maria? Parks and open spaces, landscapes, downtown, parking lot, streets, private and residential. Okay, I'm just going to zoom through.
Yeah.
Others. Which of the following activities would you be willing to participate in? Volunteer at a community tree planting, attend an educational workshop, plant a tree in your private property, volunteer to provide basic tree care on a regular basis, help organize a tree planting. And let's see. How can the city best help you plant and or care for a tree in your yard? Provide answers to common questions about tree health, labor to do the work, financial support, provide educational materials. How did you hear about this survey? Public event, City of Santa Maria website, nonprofit website, shared on social media, newspaper, article, TV, received an email. Let's see. What is the best way for the city to communicate with you about the city tree management and urban forestry management plan? And there's their different choices. Additional comments. What is your zip code? Which describes your housing type, apartment, single family home, and then other, which describes your housing situation. Most were homeowners, but there were, well, 2/3 homeowners, a third renters, or something else approximately. Well, let me see, homeowners. Oh, it says 54% homeowners, 27% renters, and the rest were something else. What is your primary language spoken in your home? English, some Spanish. English 87%, Spanish 11%. And okay, also not of Hispanic origin, or and then yes, Mexican American, Chicano origin. So those were that's pretty equal. There's a little more that were not Hispanic. Someone saying something? Okay, yeah, and since, since this committee has started, we have a representative from MECOP on there and one from CAUSE. And we didn't have that originally, so I'm hoping we're gonna get more input from those communities that they are directly in contact with. And which describes you, a lot of white or Caucasian, and then you can see the other races. And let's see. Which category includes your age? It looks like you got a pretty strong younger age here, and I think CAUSE brought in a lot of these people, and then a lot more here in the higher ranges and some in between. Let's see, what is the highest level of education you've attained? So, and you want to run a free tree? Did you want a free tree? Okay, so that's it. So let's go back to questions. And Larry, would you like to ask your question now?
Yes, thank you, Scott, and also Jeannie for going over that survey. My question is in regards to well, a couple of questions. Is in your goals of canopy cover, do you have any preferences or goals for other the specific type of tree, like native species or native to the local environment? Is there a goal that in planting you'll plant so many manzanita or live oak or sycamore or cottonwoods trees native to this area versus other trees, and encourage that? And the other question is just the balance between the interests of a tree canopy and providing shade and those other environmental goals, and where does that conflict with people who want solar panels on their roof and they don't like the neighbors shading their solar panels, and so the struggle with other good things that, for the environment, and where they conflict with your tree goals. Just if those two things, native species and the conflict with other issues, solar panels, public safety, trip hazards, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. Right now, we haven't adopted this, so part of this will be part of the goal as far as what the focus is. I'm a big advocate on native plants. I know a lot about them. So I definitely want to put more of them in. It has not been particularly a goal in the past. One thing though about urban forests that we have to watch out for a lot is you have a concentration of trees, and it often is a place where we get a concentration of diseases. And so we have to make sure we have enough variety. We need to have trees in different genus, meaning like having several varieties of oaks, a disease may still go through all of them. And even from very different families and stuff. So we do want to have some diversity, and there aren't enough California trees that are good in this environment to just do it with that. So yes, we want to put more native trees than we have traditionally, but we will continue to have non-natives to keep that diversity up. The question about solar panels, that is a tough one because they are both things we want. Hopefully good planning will be involved in that. California case law pretty much says whoever gets there first wins. So I've had people that have added solar panels to their house, and then they ask us to top the street trees, and we say no, because you know, you should have planned that ahead of time. But likewise, anytime we're planting new trees, we have to be conscious of where the solar panels already are. I hope these two groups can recognize the benefits of each other and work together, that rather than be at loggerheads about it. As far as the rest of you're hinting at the infrastructure, we're very conscious of it. I'm particularly conscious of it because I don't want trees to have get a bad reputation. So we're doing a better job at tree selection and placement. You know, you can imagine the development community always would say, we just want a little bit more and a little bit more. And so in the past, you ended up with trees crowded into really small places. And nowadays we just say no. When it's within our power, we say no, fine, you know, because the tree crowded will eventually cause problems, and then ultimately often the tree gets removed. So we are heading that way. Like I said, we're having to deal with our past practices, and so we're trying to get more proactive at things like going in and root pruning whole neighborhoods so that trees that are about to cause disruption don't do it. That's a little hard on the trees, but it's better than removing them.
All right, let's go to Lawanda for your question.
Well, their comments. So
Okay.
on the trees, that's really big for me. And a couple of things that I always hear from people. Selection. It seems that the city just put in the worst trees possible. Trees that you know, they're kind of crazy and they're needles or whatever. They're all over the cars and all over the yards, and people hate it. The other thing is the sidewalk. They the roots uproot the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And people have a problem with that. So then they go to the city, and then the city doesn't want to take responsibility for it. And they say, well, you know, you go ahead and you remove the tree. We give you permission to remove the tree. So my house that I live in, I've been here since '89, and I have a beautiful olive tree, but it was out of control. It was just huge, humongous. I contacted the city. They go, oh no, we didn't plant that tree. And I go, well, can I cut the tree back? It needs maintenance or something. And they go, well, it's not our tree. And so anyway, so I maintain the tree now. And my neighbor across the street, they gave him permission because the tree was damaging his sidewalk. And they gave him permission to actually cut the tree down. And I don't remember what type tree. And it must be my neighborhood because directly west of him is another home, and they're just having all type problems with a tree that the city that they planted. And they said that we have problems like with it getting on our cars, the yard, and it's just a terrible situation. Anyway, those are my comments because I love trees, but we have to plant the right trees when we're doing it in our urban forest. And everyone I know in Santa Maria, when they build a home, the city plants a tree in the yard. But the city needs to plant the right tree. You shouldn't just plant any old tree in the yard. You should plant a tree that the homeowner will nourish and will, you know, take pride in. So those are my comments.
Is there a type of tree or types of trees that you would recommend that the city plant?
Well, I have an olive tree. I love the olive tree, but it was out of control. It was big. It was just crazy. And so I actually hired a tree guy who knew all about the tree, and he actually shaped the tree into a ball. Didn't cut it down or anything like that, but he shaped it, cut it back, and it's just a beautiful tree, and I love it.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and I just take pride when I go out and I look at my tree, and I just love it. But the city needs to take pride in the trees that they plant and not just plant any old tree
Okay, Scott,
because they have them.
did you want to make any comments to that, Scott?
Yeah, a few. So first, part of this plan does include a new tree street tree list. So it's an update. So what's different here from the past is this is coming from, you know, a statewide network of people in the urban forestry profession to come up with these trees. And we're looking at all kinds of factors, but certainly their suitability for things like roots and debris are part of it. So, because in the past, it's always sort of been whatever staff have decided. And honestly, staff historically have not always actually been very educated. And so, you know, we've started to informally do this, but now we'll have this because we recognize that we have trees that were put in that were, well, it's not really that a tree is ever a bad tree. It's not always the right tree for the situation. And we put trees in the past that had aggressive roots, and yet we put them really close to sidewalks. So we've changed that practice, but we're going to take this more and have this this list so we recognize these problems. We have we're out every year. You know, we spend about $100,000 a year in repairing sidewalks because of trees. But there's a backlog of doing that. We recognize that. Now, if any of you can find the tree that doesn't drop anything, you can make a lot of money. All right. I'm afraid as far as tree debris goes, it's finding out what works the best. All trees drop leaves, twigs, fruits, berries, acorns or something. Some of these are a bigger problem than others. Again, we have tried to steer away from some things that are particularly messy. That's actually one reason the olive tree mentioned. Love the olive tree. We don't like them hanging over streets because they drop a lot of fruit that stay in. But on that, some debris like trees that get infestations of like aphids and then drop sticky goo all over cars, we're not planting those anymore. So we'd really rather have a tree that does not need to be treated with insecticide rather than go through a constant insecticide program. So that's some sort of debris related stuff we're trying to do. So we're aware of the problems. We can't get rid of all the trees that were the problem trees all at once, but we're not propagating them.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate your answer.
Sure.
I'm trying to talk and I'm muted. Maybe we can get LaWanda to join the Urban Forestry Committee. She's got a lot of good comments there.
Yeah.
We'll take one more question or comment from Sarah, then we have to move on because we're way over time. So Sarah, go ahead.
Okay. How do we get on? My neighbor across the street has a tree that has the roots have uplifted the sidewalk.
Yeah.
How do we get on your wait list?
Okay, boy, I wish I had it right here in front of me, but we have a street tree hotline.
Okay,
Call that line, give an address, say what your concerns are, and we'll come look at it, especially if it's something about roots.
okay, all
Okay.
right.
It's as simple as that.
That's what Lon asked me to try to find out.
Yeah.
And his mother just passed away, and I'm sure that they will be probably selling the house at some point.
Sure. This is particularly important to us, because often there's uplifting, and we can at least do things to get the sidewalk patched in the meantime, cut
Yeah.
some roots so it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, that's pretty bad because it's the original tree.
And then
Okay.
and then it'll get on the list with Public Works to replace. the sidewalk.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Scott, for coming. This has really been informative. I really, really appreciate it. And anybody who wants to send me any comments, let me know, because I'm going to continue working on the Urban Forestry Committee. And Scott, thanks again.
Thanks for having me, for letting me talk so much about my subject. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Scott.
Right.
Thanks, Jeannie. I'm going to jump ahead for maybe a couple items that might be 1 minute, so we can get back to one that might take 5 minutes. So we've got number 6 on our agenda is the Bailey Avenue annexation update. And the update is simply that LAFCO heard this matter again and made their final decision on April 6th, which was to deny the sphere of influence expansion that Lompoc had requested. We've been fighting this for our whole 21 years of existence and some of our people before that. So we're ecstatic. It's not the end of it, I'm sure, because they'll probably come back later, but it's going to be a long time until they do. But it was a 6-1 vote at LAFCO to deny. And as part of that, they did say, they gave direction to staff to come back with some sort of suggestion for an ad hoc committee or something that would talk about the urban ag interface. And, you know, we're thinking, Nadia and I talked about this earlier today or yesterday, that, you know, it's not a LAFCO thing to talk about that. It's a bigger thing that I don't know whether it should be at the Council of Governments where there's all the cities and all the supervisors represented. But it's a big discussion, but it's something that has to be had because the pressures are on Santa Maria, as we'll talk about in a moment. On the general plan, it's on Lompoc, Carpinteria. It's been in Buellton and in Solvang, and it's definitely in Goleta. So it's worth talking about the interface between ag and urban. And anyway, meanwhile, celebrate the Bailey Avenue denial for the 3rd time, I think it is, over the years. Are there any questions about this?
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job, SB. Good job, Ken.
We've been
And
fighting,
Nadia and Jeannie.
and it
Good
goes.
job.
This goes back to my predecessor, and she fought it for the 20 years before she even worked for SB Can. And so then, Jeannie, do you want to give an update on the healthy watershed?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're still trying to move forward on our Healthy Watershed Initiative. Our original plans were to do water quality testing out at the Santa Maria Estuary. It's still not accessible, so we were trying to find other things to do. One is to maybe go to Twitchell Reservoir and have a tour of that, but I haven't got a response back yet from the Santa Maria Valley Water Conservation District, so I don't know if that's going to work out. What we are going to do in the meantime is talk about our project during the Earth Day celebration in Guadalupe. And I had a flyer, which I was trying to pull up, but it's April 22nd. I don't know, maybe Alan has any details. I think, Alan, are you going to be there with CEC? So
Yeah, hopefully, we're hoping to have a table for the air monitoring project. So we'll just, it'll be a small, I think a pretty small event. Just a few tables, but we'll be there. I'll be there.
yeah, so if anybody would like to be there, we're gonna have some type of information about our project for the water quality. I don't know what we're gonna say yet, but we want to spread the word in Guadalupe and be part of that on April 22nd. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Jeannie. And I want to ask Nadia if she would just take a second before we take the last 5 minutes or so on the general plan. Nadia, would you like to speak about the rent eviction stuff that's been going on? It's been a huge thing, and it's countywide,
Yeah.
but especially in Isla Vista, and you've been in the thick of it.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, basically a rent eviction is when a landlord evicts a tenant that has done nothing wrong, that has no fault, it's called. They haven't been late on their rent, they haven't broken the lease. And there's very specific cases where you're able to remove a tenant if they haven't broken their lease. And actually the ending of one lease is not a reason to remove a tenant. If your lease ends, your landlord has to offer you an additional lease or an additional month, unless they do one of three things. The one thing is if they are going to remove the property from the market, so they're not going to rent it anymore, they're going to sell it, or they're going to tear it down or something like that. The other is if they're going to move an immediate family member into the home. And the third way, and the only way to remove a tenant while keeping the unit on the market, is to claim that you're going to do substantial remodels, like a substantial renovation. And that's part of the Tenants Protection Act that was passed in 2018. And it's part of everyone in California is protected by that. So what that means is as long as you live in a unit, also part of the Tenant Protection Act is that rents can only be increased 5% plus CPI per year, and CPI is the inflation rate, up to 10%. So this year inflation was very high, so rents could be increased 10%. So the only way that a landlord can legally get around a 10% annual increase is by taking a tenant out to do renovations. So basically that's what we're seeing in the city of Santa Barbara and in the county and all over the state, is that all these landlords are claiming they're going to do substantial remodels. Sometimes they do, and then they double the rent, they triple the rent, they kick families out, they move students in, they kick lower income people out, they move higher income people in, and it's a really big problem across the state. So in the city of Santa Barbara, a couple of weeks ago, we got stronger protections against renovictions, which makes it so that the landlord has to prove in good faith that they actually plan to do the renovation by having the permits in hand. They have to give advance notice to the tenant to give them as much time as possible to find a new place and things like that. And then just a couple days after we won that huge victory in the city of Santa Barbara, there was this huge mass eviction we saw happening in Isla Vista. So we talked about it at the South County Roundtable. It's been all over the Independent and even national news. It's called CBC and the Sweeps. And there's 264 units, about 1,000 tenants. A lot of them are families, a lot of them are Spanish speaking. A lot of them are students as well, but there's families that have lived there for 10, 20, even 30 years. There's people with 3 generations living in the same apartment. And a new owner bought the building and decided to kick everyone out to turn it into luxury student apartments. So I'm a member of the Santa Barbara Tenants Union, and we sort of have jumped on this and are supporting them in SBCAN as well as supporting. And we got the county of Santa Barbara to pass an emergency ordinance that's basically exactly the same as the city of Santa Barbara one. And it halts this eviction in its tracks. It makes the landlord have to go back and get all these permits and claim good faith and go through all the right steps before evicting these 1,000 people. Which would be 5% of the Isla Vista population and like 30% of the low income units on the South Coast or something crazy like that. So anyway, it was a big deal. It's the biggest deal thing that I've seen happen in my time paying attention to local politics. It was less than 2 weeks of intense advocacy at the county level, and they held a special meeting like that pretty much. And there was a lot of advocacy on the tenants union parts and the tenants in Isla Vista, and they all came together. It was a lot of their first time ever giving public comment. A lot of people cried while giving their public comment. Many people, myself included, said it was the most moving public comments they've ever seen. And that's what Laura Kapp said about in her whole time being a public servant. So yeah, it was just really powerful experience to be a part of. There's still more fight ahead to secure even stronger protections or longer term. So definitely pay attention to that. And yeah, it is countywide, so it affects everyone in the unincorporated county, not just Isla Vista. But yeah, I don't know if that was brief enough, but that's been the situation.
That was perfect. And I didn't tell you,
Great.
I didn't put you on the spot, but I knew you could, I knew you could speak to it.
It's all I've been talking about.
That's all you've been doing for a while.
Many weeks. So
and Lawanda, you have 30 seconds if you want to say what you saw at that meeting last
Well,
Thursday.
I just want to say that it renewed my faith in mankind. You know, like if you're kind of feeling like, forget this, I don't want to do this. And when everyone organized together, I had the biggest smile on my face. It was just beautiful to see. So, yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yeah.
yeah, and thank you. Lawanda is one of the people who called in support of the emergency ordinance. So yeah, that was great.
And we were so busy last week that I wasn't even there, but Lawanda was there and Nadia was there. I was busy with the Bailey Avenue annexation update, and that's the next item on the agenda. And I'll just
Totally enjoyable.
so LAFCO denied their sphere of influence expansion for the third time, and hopefully that'll be gone. And so let's see. Oh, I already said that. So Santa Maria general plan update. We have a couple of minutes left. And I guess I just want to make sure that everybody will do the survey that Santa Maria has made available to us. Alan did it a few days ago, and he told us that it took about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's true. It took me 10 or 15 minutes. I did it.
I did.
It's a good survey, and Sarah did it, and so we should all do it. And if anybody needs help to find where to,
It's
it's
really,
on our agenda, right? It's Sarah. Sorry. Go.
it's really, I as much as I like surveys, it was kind of, it doesn't take you that long, and it's kind of hard to pick which building unit you want. There wasn't even an option for a none of the above, but I did it today, knowing that I'd probably be asked if I'd done it.
All right.
Great.
And
Alan had posted the link in the chat if you don't have it.
Well, I clicked on the link for the North County Coalition and tried to do it, and it didn't work.
well, you have time. It goes until it's open until
To May 2nd, I know.
May 2nd. So, and you can take your time and think about it. You can scroll through it and think about your answers. Most of my answers were pretty apparent from our perspective, which was higher density and save the farmland and so forth.
Right.
But there are some nuances that you could think about. There's some middle grounds that you might want to take. But there's essentially the options in this general plan land use alternative is infill or annex or
Hybrid.
something in between.
Well, I appreciate getting the information from SB Kid and Nadia, and I know how we want to go.
All right. So then, does anybody else have another update that they want to give before in 2 minutes we're scheduled to adjourn?
Yeah, tomorrow, Legal Aid is gonna have a meeting on renovation. And it's at 12 noon. Unfortunately, I can't be there. I think I sent it to Sarah and Pam and
Denise.
several people and they registered. But I can't be there, but I think that if we can go, we should go. I have a funeral tomorrow.
Oh,
Lawanda, can you send me that? I haven't seen that actually.
Yeah, I will send that. Now, I assume that you had it. It's tomorrow, right, Sarah? And
yes,
Pam?
it's tomorrow at noon. Yeah, I
Okay,
got it.
it's from Jennifer.
Uh-huh,
But
yeah.
I will
Jennifer
make
from
sure,
Legal
I
Aid.
will make sure that I send it to you, Nadia.
And I
Thank
think,
you.
and Larry, I think Joan Vignoki, gotta keep remembering how to pronounce her last name. She'll probably be there as well because she works for Legal Aid and help get that renovation ordinance written.
Yeah, legal aid was super, super helpful. We definitely couldn't have done it without them.
Don't forget to save your chats.
With, I guess now we're at 6:30, but just to close us out, I will say that we have our North County Awards dinner has been scheduled. Our winners have been chosen and sponsorships are open. So if you or your organization is interested in sponsoring, you'll get a number of tickets depending on the level, and you'll get an ad in our tribute book and you'll get a shout out on our website and during the event. So we're going to be posting all that information on the website, and I'll be emailing folks soliciting those. And our tickets should be available to purchase on our website soon also. So keep an eye out for that. And that event will be June 25th. That's a Sunday at Gloucester Urban Garden from I think 3 to 6 p.m. just like last year. So we'd love to have you there, and we'd love for you to put on your calendar if you haven't already.
Let me know if you need a land acknowledgement.
We will, yeah.
We may have one adopted by our board by that time. And I will say to Larry Bishop, I appreciated your acknowledgement, and you've got the detail. And so we've learned as we're developing ours with help from our consultant, that there's a lot of different names. It's not just Chumash, but there's different places. And so Larry, you know your place. I need to learn mine and be able to say that myself.
Oh, and if you go to Cal Poly, they have a whole dorm complex that's all with different Chumash names.
Nice.
Yakatutu, Nipumu.
And I'd like to learn the one where I am, and then that would be a start. And you're learning multiple ones, and so this is great. And thank you, Larry, for saying that at the start. That's nice, and it's nice to have you here again.
Yes.
You're muted there.
Okay, I was just gonna say that name is Honhoniata. The Spanish translated that to Hanata. They reduced it from Honhoniata, which means big oak tree, and they called it Hanata. So you see Hanata Ranch is a big portion of the Buellton area. So it's
And,
Yeah, so-
and thank you, Larry. And while you're there as well, Buellton is going to have its open streets event coming up. So what's the date? And just, we're going to end in
Yeah,
1
it's,
minute.
okay,
This is
May,
your last minute.
May 21st. So please, please join us. They're looking for entries I'm going to be working with our community garden folks and the city green team. And it's going to be on the Avenue of the Flags. There's going to be bicycle things and all sorts of things, big activity. We won't match the Santa Maria City open streets on Main, but we're gonna have a big celebration for the whole valley there, and hopefully folks can join us and participate.
Thank you.
I think Ken and I might be volunteering at that event. So,
Ah,
I think we will.
all right,
So we'll see you there.
all right.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Don't forget to
everybody.
get registered to voters. How about get Giovanni to help out?
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you very much.
Bye.
thank you.
Bye now.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Luana. Talk to you
Good
soon.
night.
Nadia, maybe you could just